Joe Biden seems to have learned something from Gavin Newsom. His mandates, orders, and lockdowns. I've been leading the fight against Newsom's same oppressive policies that limit our freedoms. I've been proud to lead the fight to suspend the gas tax. I'll fight to end early release and to hold criminals accountable. I will never back down from the fight for our freedoms and to protect our way of life. I'm Kevin Kiley, and I approve this message.
Wow, we're gonna contest everything. We're gonna contest Oregon. We're gonna contest the state of Washington, and all of you naysayers out there said that we got to give up on California. You couldn't be more wrong, because I'm telling you, some of the best talent we got out and some of the fighters we've got out there in the great golden state of California. And here's why it's important strategically. And we said this in the recall, and the reason we were focused on the recall and not really somebody that replaced him as governor is that if somebody doesn't chop block Newsom and he finishes with a 20-point win here and for the governorship this November with $150 or $200 million in the bank, hey, and I know people say, oh, Newsom is not this, no, Newsom not that. Hey, a guy with $200 million, governor of California with Silicon Valley and all that. And so that's why we need to confront him. And you've got guys out there in the assembly that are doing it. And some of those people are stepping up and running for federal office, running for Congress. Boris Ephsteyn, thank you for joining us for this part of War Room Battleground. Kevin Kiley from California 3. Kevin, tell the folks, you're already in the assembly. Talk to us about the fight you've had against Newsom as an assemblyman.
Well, I mean, I've been fighting him in every way I can, and thanks for having me on, Steve. California has been sort of the worst state in the country in every way for a long time when it comes to politics, but that's never been more true over the last couple of years when California had the most extreme, the most radical mandates, lockdowns each and every step of the way throughout the COVID shutdowns. So I took Gavin Newsom to court very early on. I sued him for abusing his emergency powers, and it actually won a lawsuit against him in 2020. But now Gavin Newsom is trying to say that California is a model for the nation. And you look at what Joe Biden's doing. He seems to, in many ways, be copying the California playbook that is ruining the greatest state in the country and is now threatening to ruin the greatest country in the world.
So tell us about your congressional run. What's motivated you to say, hey, I'm going to leave the assembly, fighting for the state, fighting for state issues, and I want to take this to Congress? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so it's precisely that when I look at what Joe Biden and what the Congress right now is doing, it's like all of California's problems are going national. Kamala Harris is kind of the personification of that. But I want to share my experience in California fighting against these radical, progressive socialist policies, these corrupt policies and corrupt politicians. Say California is not a model for the nation. As Newsom says, California is a warning to the nation. And I think that's what's on the line right now in this country. When we look at the 2022 election, we face a very clear choice as a country. Are we going to continue down this radical, failed, disastrous path of California, or are we going to return to the founding principles that America is all about? Limited government, personal freedom, the rule of law, the Constitution. Because I think that is all on the line right now with this administration.
Kevin, I want to talk. Can you talk to the country? Because, I lived in California for years, and I kept telling people California is kind of so isolated because there's so much going on. It's such a great lifestyle with all the political problems. It's detached really from Washington, what's happening. But there are more Republicans in California, I think, than any of the great states. I mean, and you have intense Republicans out there. You have a big MAGA movement. You have a great, deep love for President Trump, America First. Walk us through where Republicans in the state stand before we talk about your specific race.
Yeah, that's a great question, because there are so many Republicans, conservatives, patriots throughout California, millions, and people right now are more fired up than I have ever seen. I've been in the legislature for 5 years, and there is really a sense of excitement right now as this movement of change continues to go. But I'll add the caveat, by the way, that it's not just Republicans in California right now who are demanding change. It's a lot of, for example, parents who might have been liberals, who might have been independents, who saw what was done to their kids in schools over the last 2 years and have said, this year, I'm going to vote differently, because people are asking, why is it in California? We have the greatest state in the country. We have so many amazing things, as you're alluding to, and yet our quality of life just continues to decline. And so I think that, California right now is a perfect case study in how these progressive policies can absolutely, and bad politics can ruin the very best thing.
Kevin, so walk us through your congressional race. What are the big issues in your district? What are people looking for? What are you running on?
Well, I'm running to fight against Biden and Pelosi just as hard as I fought against Newsom in the supermajority. I've been called Gavin Newsom's chief antagonist because, I've been trying to fight to stop him in every way that I can here. And we've had some very important victories, by the way. They're trying to force all of these even more extreme mandates on us right now in the legislature. We've managed to stop a lot of them. But I want to take that same fight to Washington, D.C. at a time when, again, we're starting to see California's problems go national. Now, this race is a really important one. It is the only open seat right now in California in a Republican-leaning district. And so it's obviously extremely important that we take back the majority this November, but we also need to have the right kind of majority, the sort of majority that is going to actually use the full powers of a majority in the House of Representatives, the investigatory powers, the oversight powers to rein in the Biden administration rather than just sitting around for a couple of years. And so that's kind of the premise of my campaign, is I think that we can't afford to have a member of Congress who will just sit there, be part of the majority. We actually need to have fighters right now because there's so much at stake.
Kevin, before we go, tell people a little bit about yourself. Give us your background.
Yeah, so I was actually a high school teacher to start my career. I taught 10th graders South Central Los Angeles, saw just how badly our corrupt education establishment is dominated by the teachers' unions and is failing our kids in California. I later went to law school. I defended the Constitution in our courts. I actually helped prosecute a case against Huawei, Chinese massive telecommunications company, for intellectual property theft here in the U.S. And then I was a prosecutor where I saw how the soft on crime policies, the lax sentence laws we have in California, have been a total disaster for public safety. And so it was sort of being on the receiving end of all of these policy failures in California and just seeing the general decline in the quality of life in the state that I grew up in, that's always been my home. That's what motivated me to run for the legislature in 2016, and it's what's motivating me to run for Congress.
Tell me, what would motivate a young guy to go teach sophomore year of high school in South Central, as even every teacher would tell you down there, the danger that would potentially represent?
I thought that's where I could do the most good. As I was a recent college graduate, I was, 21 years old, 22 years old when I started teaching. But I was very fortunate. I went to a great public school growing up, but I also knew that we have a lot of problems with education in California. And so I was actually able to make a pretty good impact in the time that I was teaching. My students had significant academic gains. They came in, by the way, at a 5th grade reading level. I taught 10th graders. They'd come in at a 5th grade reading level. And I've tried to advocate for the sort of changes that will help kids like that actually get a good education in California, promoting school choice, promoting charter schools, promoting accountability. I've done that as vice chair of the Education Committee. And at the beginning of this year, the supermajority decided they didn't like that very much. They actually removed me from the committee because of the way I'd advocated for those sort of changes, as well as advocating to keep schools open during the COVID shutdown. They just sort of summarily removed me from the committee, which is sort of a perfect example of why one-party supermajority rule is a really bad thing for this state, and is right now, as we have minorities on the other side in Congress, is a very bad thing for the country.
Kevin, I don't know if you could have picked two jobs that will show you the tragedy of the failure of big government on the potential of young people in this country, and being a high school teacher in South Central and then being a prosecutor. You see the tragedy of the unlimited potential, the great potential of the citizens of this country, and you see how the system itself is just a failure at every level. I really admire the fact that you did both of those, because I think that's the type of experience that people would say, hey, I've been there, I've seen it. You can't spin me. You can't BS me. I know what the changes have to be made. So welcome aboard. Glad to have you in the MAGA movement. I hear you're a great fighter out there, Newsom. And I keep telling people, because a lot of guys in the chat room, and a lot of people I talk to, oh, Newsom this, Newsom that. I think he's going to be quite formidable. He's going to have a lot of money. I think he's going to win the governorship here big. He's going to have a huge war chest afterwards. He knows how to play Silicon Valley. He knows how to play Hollywood. This guy, and you've seen, you've been given the warning to the nation, but I think that's going to be a storm warning before too long. Kevin, how do people find out more about you, and how they get to your campaign site?
Yeah, so it's electkevinkiley.com. I'm Kevin Kiley. It's Kiley. You can just Google Kevin Kiley for Congress or DuckDuckGo, Kevin Kiley for Congress. And would love to have your help. We have a citizens movement that is really propelling this campaign. We have over 12,000 individuals who have contributed to make it one of the top campaigns for grassroots support of the country, and would really appreciate your help to get over this.
Sir, thank you very much for coming to War and Battleground.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Boris, this is one of the reasons I'm glad we added the fourth hour. I want to make sure we're profiling people like this all over the country. We're in Oregon and Washington. We have to contest. Al Jazeera has a story today, a huge opinion piece from a guy on the faculty at Harvard that says the new rising threat to democracy in America, Boris Ephsteyn, a new rising threat to democracy. And it's a very well thought through piece. It's actually very tight, but the new rising threat to democracy in this country is Moms for Liberty, as seen on the War Room, right? So, but this is, and Kevin's a perfect example. You know, the guy's got a great reputation out there in the assembly of taking on Newsom. And look, I know you and I agree with Newsom, about the threat he represents. This is why we spend so much time on the recall. And a guy like Kevin, this is what I keep telling people, so many guys in I said, forget California. I said, you can't forget it. There's more Republicans there. And I think in Florida and Texas. And I say, this is a massive state. It's the seventh biggest economy in the world. We never should have conceded this state. It used to be Republicans. Reagan came from there. Nixon came from there. Ronald Reagan state. So many great Republicans have come from there. It's so much resources. It's got a vibrancy to it. MAGA should dominate that state, and we can dominate that state. But you got to do the pick and shovel work. You're not going to be able to go in there and glam. You got to go in there and work. Boris Ephsteyn.
Steve, I was very impressed with that interview. And Kevin is somebody who's got an unbelievable background, right? And you could tell this guy's a comer, right? He's great education, great background. He could be at some big name firm, earning a bunch of bucks and living happily and not worrying about it. Instead, he's in the California State Assembly taking the fight to Gavin Newsom, and now he's running for Congress. So these are the kind of MAGA fighters we want. And you could see right away that the guy's got a future, right? Get him elected to Congress, and who knows? From there, he could be challenging for the Senate, could be challenging for the governorship of California. These are the kind of people who we want to be the young leaders of MAGA. The guy's younger than me; he's still in his 30s. So that lines up exactly perfectly what we've been doing, right? As we broaden our movement, as the movement has expanded unbelievably, Hispanics, African Americans, Asian Americans, Jews, young people, we are taking over the country, and exciting candidates like that are exactly what we need.
Yeah, Justice and Tiffany and Tina, I think, are joining us tomorrow. Al Jazeera got a guy from Harvard that wrote this piece. Great. It's actually from their perspective. From the Democratic Party, they are a threat, right? It's a very tightly reasoned piece. It's exactly the mirror image of what reality is. But when Al Jazeera goes to Harvard to say, hey, I think we found a problem, it's Moms for Liberty, this shows you that we're winning, and that's what we're trying to profile all these people.
Well, look at these freakouts all across the country. You got it all across the world. The freak out. The head lawyer of Twitter, a public company, is crying because Elon Musk has taken over, and now it gets its way in the press. Okay, so the libs are crying because a successful businessman is buying a company. They're crying because of Moms for Liberty. They're crying because of the school boards. They're crying because of MAGA wins up and down the ballot. And they're crying because of what happened in France with Macron just pulling it out because of, let's be honest, older baby boomers getting him across the finish line over there in France. So they've got a big problem. The libs, the radical left has got a big problem. They've been marginalizing themselves for a long time, and the chickens have come home to roost.
Well, the other thing I like about Kevin and what he represents, you're seeing this a lot of the candidates. They say, oh, this is nothing but a white nationalist movement. This is all racial. They all hate black people and Hispanics. And yet we're seeing increasing Hispanic American, coming to our movement. And when you see Mayorkas up on Capitol Hill today lying through his teeth about this invasion on the southern border. But what I like about Kevin is that here's a guy who could go anywhere, do anything. He volunteers immediately out of college to go back to South Central, to high school, and teach a sophomore. That's courage to go in there every day and teach and to try to help those kids. And like you said, hey, it's not these kids. These kids are delivered by the LA school system at a 5th grade reading level. Then later on, he goes back and he's a prosecutor. Okay. If you want to see the tragedy of our system, go be a high school teacher in a public school in a big inner city, or go be a prosecutor. You see the failure of all of it, right? And the great potential and human potential there that's going untapped every day.
Biden
so I think this
feckless team are babbling about Ukraine and the rainforest and all that. We've got kids dying, literally and metaphorically dying by the time they get out of high school. And that's not just in LA. That's LA, Camden, Chicago, Detroit, Newark, all across Washington, D.C., all across the country. That's what's happening under Democrat leadership. So maybe Ron Clay was tweeting out about Macron and all that. Listen, Ron, you're the chief of staff, okay? You're no longer just a bubbling Democrat idiot that you've been most of your career on MSNBC. You're the chief of staff, and you get paid by the American taxpayer. Focus on America. Focus on America.
Do we have the spot for Pennsylvania we can play? Let me know when that's ready in Memphis, and then we'll play it. I want to go to Twitter for a second. Here's my theory of the case. And I understand now they got $1 billion breakup fee, but people on the right have got to stop fanboying over this, right? You're looking for Zelensky, or you're looking for Elon Musk to walk in and be these heroes, and you're all fanboy. It's embarrassing. This situation at Twitter, best case, he wouldn't close the transaction with all the chop blocks they're going to give him and all the regulatory approvals. He wouldn't close it until the fourth quarter, right? But he's got to still get his financing in place. I understand there's $1 billion breakup fee. Boris, I love President Trump. He's not going back there. Hey, I was permanently kicked off. I'm not going back to Twitter. Are you kidding me? Maybe years from now when I see it squared up. But right now, I believe strongly he should pull the deal. It's like Saigon over there. You got the head general counsel. She's the one that kicked Trump off and kicked the war room off, right? Because of the Joe Biden, the hard drive from hell. That's why she kicked us off. She took Trump off, the commander in chief. She made the decision. You've got these little snowflakes over there crying about Elon Musk. Musk should pull the deal, Boris. You're an investment banker. The stock will drop 20%. The board will get sued. They'll have to blow out the management team. Why should Elon Musk go deal with this management team? They're all crying they don't want him. Hey, guess what? They don't have another bid. And you know this, Boris, since they accepted a deal that's 25%, I think, below where the stock traded 9 months ago. And you know how hard it is to get a fairness opinion on that. That means they don't have an internal model. There's no internal business model. And there's not going to be a business model if conservatives don't go back. The stock started dropping last spring when it became evident that President Trump was out and not coming back. But then after Getter launched and Parler got some traction and Rumble had some good announcements, the stock dropped by half. They lost $35 billion since July 4th. And that is because conservatives said, hey, screw you. We got to continue to say that. We need to bring Twitter to its knees and let the board get sued and let this management team get sued. Boris Ephsteyn.
There is no management team, Steve. These are just snowflakes, a bunch of woke idiots. Their management is shadow banning and actually banning MAGA. That's what their whole management of the business is. What have you seen Twitter do that somehow moves the business forward, that expands the business? That stupid Spaces thing, which literally is impossible to actually look at. The Twitter is a failed business masquerading as an operating business. So I think you're totally right. What Musk should do is pull the bid, let them all blow up, and then hey, maybe go in and buy it up after. Maybe buy it out after Chapter 11 or something like that. Let them go and sell the company off because they're not an operating business. Here's the other part. Why all of a sudden are they letting everybody back on now? Okay, the deal hasn't closed, right? They have an agreement in principle. So why all these changes now? Gary Kobe's back on, who was banned right away when President Trump was banned because they thought that he was somehow giving the president his Twitter account. Almost everybody, in terms of the MAGA folks who are not President Trump, have been let back on. Why the change now? People are saying that their following has gone up by a lot. Why the change now? They're obviously hiding something. very smart people on the street, very smart people in tech are telling me that they're adjusting the algorithm. So something is they are hiding something. They're freaked out at Twitter,
big time,
because they don't have a business.
They're burning the evidence. Posobic's hundreds of thousands. Heck, Boris may be back there. Boris, hang over a second. I want to bring in John McNaughton. Now, John, I don't want to say this is because of NFTs and being on the War Room, but I did notice a puff piece in Politico. Politico is not in the business of writing puff pieces for people associated with the cultural aspects of MAGA and President Trump. Boris, I'm watching the other day, and I mean, literally, it's the lead story. And I go, is that McNaughton? Brother, that was an incredible piece, and it really said a lot about you, about what you've done for the MAGA movement and what you mean for President Trump. Walk us through the article and then tell us we're going back and we're going to talk about this President Trump collection on the NFTs. But tell us about the Politico story for a second. It was just incredible.
Oh, well, thanks. I didn't realize we were going to talk about that. You know, I get asked a lot to do these interviews, and I almost said no to them because I thought, well, they're just going to do another snarky article about me. But he actually was pretty fair. And it was, I mean, he interviewed me for about 45 minutes. It was a long interview and asked me a lot of detailed questions. And I just told him exactly how I felt about different things. And the article was, it was pretty much accurate. I mean, he definitely comes from a liberal point of view, but if people want to know a little bit about me, he asked some good questions. So
no, I think what's here is, I think what's Trump important. And, I met you, with Andrew, but I think what was important about the piece is that you've really been the painter and the artist that's captured this entire movement from kind of the Tea Party and Breitbart all the way up to MAGA and President Trump, right? And you've had an art of coming to the MAGA movement, but you're really the artist. You're really the artist that's represented this. And years from now, when people look at it, you kind of paint in the moment. You paint things that are happening, and you paint things that are symbolic. And obviously, the MAGA absolutely loves you, the America First movie. So go back to NFTs. We've got this collection. That's a President Trump collection. Walk us through the NFTs. Why are you involved in the NFTs? How can people participate in your art this way?
Well, the NFT was something that we decided to do at the beginning of the year. And like I've said before, the reason I wanted involved is I think of my artwork as being historic because it represents a conservative's point of view of this time in our country's history. And the NFT is a perfect way to do that, to create something that I think embodies the Trump movement, his legacy. And NFTs are kind of different. They're a little more humorous, a little more lighthearted, but it's a good investment, and it's a good way for people to get a part of it, become a part of this community that we're doing to try to take back the country. And so that's why I got involved. We've been doing it since January. It's doing pretty good, and we just made it available on my website where, to get rid of the big headache of having to use cryptocurrency to purchase, you can actually go on there and use your credit card. And we're doing a special where if you use the coupon code War Room, you get a 30% discount. And we've never done that before. We want to get as many people involved in this before it sells out. So you need to go to johnmcnaughton.com and use War Room as the coupon code, and get yourself one of these McNifty NFTs. That's what we call them. They're amazing. So check it out.
We got a couple minutes. When people go on the site, can they go and check out which one they would actually want to purchase?
No, it's kind of interesting. They buy one and then they have to mint it, and so they don't know what they're going to get. It's like opening a pack of cards. So you could get one that has a really high value. And there's people that have been trying to flip these for a considerable amount of money, or you could get a common one that is whatever you paid for it. So and each one is unique. No two are alike. So it's kind of interesting that way. It's different than just going and buying a regular print or something. It has intrinsic value.
So give us one more time. How do people get there? How do people get to the website?
Okay, you go to johnmcnaughton.com. That's my regular website. And when you get there, you'll see the link for the NFTs. And when you check out, you just use the coupon code War Room and get yourself one or two of these. They're pretty awesome. I think you ought to at least take a look at them. They're pretty interesting.
Yeah. You get a 30% discount by using the War Room promo code. So John, thank you very much. We're going to have you back on here. I want to, you're the Benjamin West, I guess, of the MAGA movement and the Trump movement. You do paint for history, and people are going to talk about your paintings and your NFTs in years to come. So thank you very much, brother, for coming on.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. Boris, can you hang with us on the other side? I want to talk about Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I've got the editorial page editor of the Washington Times, who is the 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night prayer. Miss Chumley's with us. And you're going to get a full explanation of the green movement in Europe and the impact on natural gas and why the West is underwriting the war in Ukraine by underwriting the Russians. We'll be back in the War Room Battleground in just a moment.
Question, if you will. Talk about those implications.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a theory of the case here that McCormick and Oz are spending so much money attacking each other that there's maybe a chance for some of the other candidates, if those two just tear each other down, for a third candidate to maybe slide in and actually win the nomination. But someone would have to emerge from the rest of the pack. And right now it's looking like Kathy Barnett might be that person. She's emerging as either, depending on how you look at it, the top of the second tier or maybe the third part of that top tier. And she's doing it, with just a lot of grassroots campaigning. She doesn't have the same kind of money as those top two do, but she's traveling the state a lot. She's impressed people, in her public appearances. The issue is she is not nearly as well known as those top two are. So the question will be, as people take a closer look at her, does that support stay with her?
Okay, we had Josh Mandel on, Boris, at the beginning of the first hour. He's out with Cruz over the next couple of days. You had this whole Club for Growth issue controversy. Got a little bit of Club for Growth issue about Toomey in Pennsylvania, but I'll get to in a second. But there, I think you could argue you're starting to see some separation. You're seeing some overnight polling, seeing some tracking polling. Looked like JD's getting some Timken, strong candidate, but she's starting to fade. Gibbons had a couple of shots, put a lot of money. I think he's starting to fade a little bit, I shouldn't say fade, but not building momentum. It's clearly down to Josh Mandel and JD, but you can start to see even some separation there given the rally last week. In Pennsylvania, it may be a little different. They're saying Oz with some of these debates, and this big debate the other night, McCormick spent so much money that right now you're not seeing the separation. Of course, the president hasn't gone back for a rally yet. But Kathy Barnett, who's pure MAGA, but has no cash, right? She's gone around the state. She's a great person, a great woman. Give me your quick assessment. Spend a minute or two here. We're kind of jammed for time, but Pennsylvania Senate race, President Trump's all in for Oz. Oz, I think, did not have as good a debate as he could have had given his skills. I think he leaned a little too much on that endorsement. Dave McCormick coming in hot, but Dave's kind of aligned himself with the establishment a little bit. Boris Ephsteyn, thoughts and analysis.
So the interesting thing about Pennsylvania is, unlike Ohio, which is next Tuesday, Pennsylvania is 2 weeks after. So there's plenty of time. President Trump is going back for a rally. And you're seeing in Ohio that the Trump endorsement continues to be the most powerful action in American politics. J.D. Vance had literally never led in a poll in Ohio. And now you're right. He's separating himself from the pack. And, it is unfortunate the Club for Growth continues to attack him and not get in line with MAGA and under the leadership of President Trump. I think that's a long-term mistake for the club because they've worked really hard to get tight with President Trump, even though they were attacking all of us who were with President Trump in 2015, 2016, and I haven't forgotten that. So, and we talked about that when Elise Stefanik became conference chair last year as well. Remember, the club tried to be against her for that one as well. So I think they're making a mistake in Ohio. In Pennsylvania, President Trump is going to go back for a rally. There's still a lot of action to be had. There's money being raised by Oz right now. So I do think in the end it's between Oz and McCormick. But can Kathy Barnett come in and ride the wave between the two of them somehow? Potentially. Yeah. But guess what the hidden lead is? All three are talking MAGA.
Yeah, and I want to do say, because the engine room at the war room engine room has, make sure I understand, Oz has definitely gotten up significantly in the polls since the endorsement of Trump. Trump's endorsement had a big impact in this race. I'm just saying with McCormick and Dave McCormick, we all know Dave. He's a great guy. That's a tough race there. I happen to think, I think there was some fun. I'm not a huge Jeff Rowe fan across the board about how some of these races are run, but Jeff knows that. And I think you're seeing the output of that. But surprising to me, Kathy Barnett, she's a hammer. Mike Lindell's a huge supporter of hers. They're going to have a rally. But President Trump's coming. We'll have to see how Pennsylvania. The good news is I've never seen MAGA so jacked up, whether it's Ohio, whether it's Pennsylvania. Our people are coming out and saying, hey, President Trump endorses this guy. But the key is after these very contested contests in these primaries, we all got to come together to win in November. So people are going to say, hey, look, there's going to be some tough shots taken here in the next we call it the 60 days of pain for a reason. This is going to be a painful process, but a necessary process to go through. After that, we unite on whoever the winner is, and we got to drive this home.
We got to remember what the movement.
I want.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Boris.
We got to remember what the movement is all about. Steve, you were just going to mention McNaughton. That's why these paintings are so powerful. That's why the NFTs are so powerful. And now that he's made it simple, you don't have to go to usually McNifty.art. You'd have to go use crypto to buy NFTs. Now you just go to johnmcnaughton.com and you become a part of the movement, part of the community. And that's a major statement too by John McNaughton to the War Room posse to give 30% off just with a promo code War Room. It is only for the War Room posse. There's no other promo codes. There's no other discounts. This is the promo code to join that movement and again make a statement about being a member of the War Room posse, of the MAGA movement, and supporting President Trump. And some of those NFTs are really cool. So there it is right there, the Trump Legacy Collection. The website again is johnmcnaughton.com.
And here's why it's important. He's been coming on the War Room, and Politico did. We're going to get the piece out. I'm going to talk about more tomorrow because the cultural piece is important. They did a very fair and very thorough. Look, they took a couple of shots, but a very fair discussion about how his art has kind of symbolized the Trump era, the Trump movement. So, by the way, I want to bring in a very special guest now, but I got to do this every morning at 8 a.m. right before we start our morning editorial call. And then at 8 o'clock, I say a short prayer. And the reason is I've been trained to do that by our next guest, Cheryl Chumley, she's over at the Washington Times as the online editor. And she started this prayer group, a nationwide prayer movement to pray every morning at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Cheryl, I always remember it. But I got to read the plug for your book, Lockdown, but the following, and I'm quoting, the Hippocratic Oath states, first do no harm. When a plague originated in a Chinese Communist Party lab in Wuhan, began spreading like a prairie fire across America, President Trump faced a no-win situation. How best to stop it? In Lockdown, Cheryl Chumley gets to the heart of the dilemma that POTUS warned us about on that March day. Don't let the cure be worse than the disease. Cheryl Chumley is one of the most important voices in the Trump movement, and Lockdown is a must-read for those deplorables who want to understand the real threat America faces, and that is Stephen K. Bannon, former chief strategist to President Trump. I'm honored to put that on your book. Cheryl, tell us about Lockdown.
Well, I'm honored to have your endorsement on my book, and I'm thrilled that you continue to do the 8 o'clock prayer club, 8 a.m., 8 p.m., praying specifically to save this nation from socialism. And as you can see by the title of my next book, Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom, they're not going away anytime soon. The left, as you know, Steve, is on a concerted, determined pathway to use this coronavirus to exploit fears for as far and as long as they can in order to keep Americans and even the world, if possible, in a continual state of fear and regulatory control. And if you look at what's coming down the pike from this coronavirus, you can go to the World Economic Forum's own website, weforum.org, and you can see their battle plan of the Great Reset, which is basically targeting America to cripple our Constitution and crumble our capitalistic system and make all of America just basically a source for the globalists to steal wealth and redistribute it as they please. And in Lockdown, I go through some of the biggest lies that we heard throughout the 2 years of the coronavirus, and also what's coming ahead, what American citizens need to do to fight this evil takeover.
By the way, if you think it's gone, in the Financial Times of yesterday, Beijing gripped by panic buying as COVID cases show grave rise, prospects of full lockdown. You have one of the greatest cities in the world, the capital of our enemy, the Chinese Communist Party, in full lockdown. You've got Shanghai in full lockdown now for, I think, the third week. If you think these lockdowns have gone away, you are sadly mistaken. And that's the power of Cheryl's book. We are in a very uncertain time in world history. And when the Chinese Communist Party, which locked down Wuhan over 2 years ago, a city of 14 million people, when they lock down their capital and you have panic buying by the sea, this is where all the cadre live. When you have panic buying, and they say because they don't know how long these lockdowns are going to go, you don't know what's going to happen. I think that's the power of Cheryl's book. It really puts you on the inside and start to think about it. And look, it's bad enough here, but this is going to have a major impact throughout the world. Cheryl, when does the book come out and how do people get it?
It comes out May 3rd, which is just next week, and people can get it on my website, CherylChumley.com, or, of course, at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, anywhere books are offered. I appreciate that, Stephen.
So, Cheryl, if they go order it today, next Tuesday, when it hits the bookshelves, they'll get their order fulfilled. They can pre-order right now.
Yep, they can pre-order right now, and it'll drive the globalists and collectivists and socialists crazy if people order this book, because there's some revealing stuff in there the left does not want you to know.
Cheryl, how do people follow you on social media? The 8 a.m., the short prayer at 8 a.m. every morning and 8 p.m. every morning has just been very powerful. How do people find out more about your 8 a.m., 8 p.m. prayer program for the nation?
Yeah, that's really the most important thing that this nation needs, right? Prayer first and foremost, putting God back on the public platform so as to keep government in its role of subservience. And so the 8 o'clock club was something that came out of my last book, Socialists Don't Sleep. Christians Must Rise or America Will Fall. And one of my biggest solutions was that if everybody just stopped what they were doing at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., wherever they were doing, whatever time zone they're in, whatever they were doing, and pray specifically to save this country from the socialists and collectivists, that where one or more gather in his name, their God will be. That's biblical. That we will have some real powers with those prayers. And I was listening to you discuss with your last guest that America's jacked up on the MAGA. And I kind of take that as evidence that prayer is working, and this eye-opening horror that we have in the White House is really giving American citizens buyer's remorse.
Amen. And I got to tell you, the power of prayer. Cheryl, you're a warrior, you're a fighter, and so glad to recommend your book and be on that back cover. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to bring, we had Dave Walsh on yesterday. Dave, the whole, Boris and I talk about this a lot, but you do such a great job. I want you to take your time, and you got about 10 minutes here. Just walk through this whole issue of the natural gas over in Russia, because we're saying right now the Western nations, particularly Germany, Italy, etc., since they got jammed up on the Green New Deal over there and kind of misled, they're now beholden to these oligarchs and to the Russian military machine, and they're underwriting. The Russians are punching back and say, hey, guess what? You're going to pay us in rubles and like it. And now they're sitting there going, we're blackmailed. We're in the middle of a war over there. Nobody knows how this is going to play out. They're talking about nuclear weapons, chemical weapons. Walk us through the underlying, the economics of the geopolitics over there, sir.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, a horrible day. By coincidence, we have Russia appearing to begin to act out on their holding Western Europe hostage by beginning to make moves to shut off gas supply. And if you look at things in the same kind of sustainable intellectual satisfaction that Western Europe has taken in this gigantic move to renewables, concurrently, their money center banks, their economic development bank in the EU, have really put the impetus on putting the brakes on funding oil and gas exploration in the North Sea, production in the Mediterranean. And here we are, with this dependence on renewables that has caused, if you take a megawatt of electricity produced by gas, it's worth 3 times what one produced by renewables is, because the renewables work, if, 1/4 of the time of solar, 3/8 of the time if wind. So when you take that factor into consideration, the baseload energy provided by gas, nuclear, and coal is worth so much more for a sustainable economy. So here we are, Germany, at the point of the spear, having taken a decision a couple of years ago to shutter all of its nuclear generation capacity. Germany was 25% dependent on nuclear power just a few years ago, now down to 13, and scheduled to close their last 6 plants, 3 this year and 3 next, to be out of the nuclear activity, which makes them even more dependent on Russian gas in the near term. Horrible situation.
Here's what the decision makers, and they kind of cratered to this youth movement by Greta. Didn't they set up the fact that the Russians knew they could blackmail them with Nord Stream and other things that President Trump fought against, but given, because the Russians are smart and understand that exact analysis you've just done. The Russians understand that Germany's entire economic structure is based upon cheap Russian natural gas. They understand that in Italy and these other countries, that although they may not, the whole structures depend upon it, such a big part of it that would have dramatic economic changes to their people. And that's why they can go to Poland when they say, hey, America's trying to destroy our central bank. We want you to pay us in rubles. Guys have to end up paying in rubles. So is your belief the Russians knew this very thoroughly about how they had captured Western Europe?
Well, the short answer to that question, is there any way in the world they would have done this back in May of 20 when oil hit negative $4 a barrel? Negative 4. There's no way. They're too strategic to have considered it. Wait till oil approached $82 a barrel, which we were at about 2 months ago to kick this off. Exactly. They've got all of Western Europe held hostage, and the countries near, unfortunately, such as Germany, again, probably the slowest to come around to want to stop using their fuel, are held at the point of the spear on this. Yeah, very, very thoughtfully done and intentionally done in timing, without question.
Dave, what about the warning of people in the United States? Are we, because you hear all this happy talk coming out of Biden, you got gas prices going through the roof. They're talking about this ephemeral Green New Deal. Have we walked ourselves into the same trap?
Yes, we have. I mean, we can talk at length about this. Electricity costs and energy are at the core of any nation's industrial competitiveness and military protection. Because without oil and gas, you think about the petrochemical industry, the cement industry, the steel industry, the aluminum industry, semiconductor manufacturing, all car making, steel making, virtually all industries heavily fueled at its core by electric power. So when one takes decisions to begin to create short supply and high costs, you're ruining your industrial competitiveness and further mortgaging livelihoods for 90% of your citizenry to make intellectually satisfying sustainability logic for the 10% of folks who to whom cost doesn't matter. It's really maybe more like 5%. But no, we had some charts here. You might have had one up to make this point more clear. And electricity is at the core on a cost basis. Access to electricity is at the core of a developed society. And there's all kinds of data to show correlations between electricity consumption and GDP per capita by country that indicate the fact that electricity is basically the blood of a developed society. And here that is. This is just a Life 101 chart showing the correlation by country. The dots are country to the moving up the high end of the scale. Electricity consumption per capita equals high GDP per capita by country. This is just a completely expected case. And what you've got now in places like the U.S., Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Spain, Italy, Germany, is a set of logic that says, hey, we're done with that. We're all over a sustainable utopia of no dependence on fossil fuels. We want to go entirely solar and wind. And would like to force that logic on the developed world who consume electricity at the rate of as low as the 1920 U.S. level or the 1910
Wow.
U.S. level of today in a lot of countries in the world.
Okay, hang on. I want to take more time on this tomorrow, but here's what I want to leave the audience with. Dave, all this happy talk you're hearing out of the Green New Deal guys, and we got about a minute. If you implement their plan, there are 3 billion people in this world, 3 billion people made in the image and likeness of God that are going to be condemned to abject poverty. Is that correct, sir?
That's basically the issue. You've got 3 to 4 billion people in the world consuming electricity at a U.S. level in 1928 on average. And that is not a sustainable life for them. It doesn't provide any ability for the uplift of their economies. China has seen that very differently, by the way, and moved very strongly, using fossil fuels, coal, and nuclear to change that mix, develop their country. Mexico has begun to do the same, which is great for Mexico, and they should do that. We want them to do that. Because the lack of that happening and our Bill Gates kind of philosophy of subjugating those countries to be looking only at wind and solar and other renewable sources that don't work day in and day out is basically condemning them to having to have a choice of either stay in abject poverty or translocate to the West where you have access to electricity, which is now what we're seeing.
Dave Walsh, hang on. We're going to get back to you tomorrow. We got to bounce. Boris, give me your, people want to know your social media before we bounce.
Comes the website. It's hot, borisep.com, at Boris on Getter, at Boris on Twitter, at Boris on Truth Social, at Boris_Ephsteyn on the gram. Stay strong. God bless. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, 10 a.m. We're coming in hot in the war room. It's going to be an explosive show, just as explosive as this morning. I want to thank Dave Walsh. We're going to have him back here to explain how we're not going to leave 3 billion people in abject poverty for the energy. See you tomorrow morning at 10.